Order. First on the agenda will be Pledge of Allegiance, tonight led by Board Member Tammy Sharp. Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Okay. Any questions on the agenda? What was that?
Oh,
You.
that was a phone.
Okay, any questions on the consent agenda? Okay. Have quite a few recognitions tomorrow night. We'll go number 8, school safety.
All right, number 8, school safety. The Tennessee Safe Schools funding for Rutherford County Schools this year is $889,760 per state law. The school board must approve the budget, and David Krim submits the budget for the allocation attached. Mr. Krim, along with engineering and construction, have worked together on this budget and request approval.
Make any questions on that? Oh, there's Mr. Cram.
Good evening. Can I answer any questions for anybody on this?
We get all this 889?
Yes, sir. We got 889,760 from the state.
All right.
At one time?
Ma'am?
One time?
Yes, ma'am. It's a recurring, but this
Not
figure is a
necessarily that
one-time event.
amount.
Right, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody got any questions for Mr. Cram?
So there was no allocation in that money for more SRO?
The state offered a separate SRO grant. This grant does not include SROs as a qualifying factor.
And you
The-
cannot supplant them either.
Correct, you can't supplant them either. You can only, it has to be strictly for counties that were without any SRO support at all. And there was a separate grant under a separate cover for that.
So others that didn't have the program, the SRO program, got money, but we didn't.
In that area, yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir?
All right, number 9.
All right, number 9 is David Urey School has approved, has an approved PTO due to rezoning. The leading parents of PTO were rezoned to Rocky Fork Elementary School. As a result, the bank account and other information migrated to Rocky Fork Elementary as well. Let me just stop there and say that's not the reason why it migrated. It migrated because the students at Rocky Fork that were part of that process went to from David Urey went to Rocky Fork. But anyway, new parents from David Urey Elementary School have stepped in and updated the Secretary of State filing, and they opened up a new bank account, and they're taking over operation of a PTO. In light of the changes, David Urey PTO is seeking to renew approval from the board to allow its continued operation.
Any questions? All right. Number 10.
All right, number 10 is for information only. When we started adding instructional coaches into our buildings, it was funded out of title money, and it was called the RTI coach. As we've added new personnel to our instructional department in order to make sure the same message is consistent throughout our schools, we're not reclassifying, but we're changing the name actually from RTI coach just to instruction coach. And like I said, the reason that it was named that in the past was because it was funded from title money. It's no longer, that went away a few years back. It's being funded out of the GPE. And in order for us to build capacity throughout our district so that the message that's being provided by our instructional department is the same message in every school, We're reclassifying those, and they're falling under the guidance of our instructional department.
Will we still be, will they still be an instructional coach in the school, same ones?
Yes, sir, they will be. Really, we're just classifying their name differently. Kind of in our department, our RTI/instructional coaches worked with federal programs, which is part of instruction, but that left our entire elementary, middle, high school coordinator and specialists, an extra person in the middle to relay information. And we wanted our instructional coaches working with instruction instead of federal programs.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, facilities.
All right, facility use approved for exemption pursuant to Board Policy 3.206, public education schools and institutions, post-secondary educational institutions, private universities and colleges, governmental entities or agencies that provide benefits to the Rutherford County school system or have an in-kind relationship approved by the Director of Schools may request the Board of Education to allow an exemption from the use of facility fee with the board, or the board may allow or deny based upon the details of specific requests. We have the Cub Scouts meetings at, where's that school? Walter Hill. Okay, at Walter Hill. Fit Kids America meeting at Barfield, the after-school program. Girl Scouts meetings at Rockville Elementary, Rocky Fork Middle, and Stewart's Creek Elementary. We got the OMS Junior Theater Festival Group and Center Stage Academy, talent show at OMS, and the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office, TWRA, and RCS, SRO Drive program at Las Casas Elementary. Is that correct? LE?
That's correct.
Okay. Y'all messing me up with these abbreviations. That's not how we always had Las Casas, but that's okay. All right. And then the Walter Hill PTO.
Now.
Walter Hill PTO Holiday Market at Walter Hill. A no fee in lieu of in-kind contribution outlined in MOU, subject to approval of the policy revisions and the MOU provisions. Fee will be assessed retroactively if policy denied.
Any questions? Okay. On the policy committee recommendations, if it's okay with the board, Spurlock will just read the policy number and the title.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. Let's find these on tab 4. The policy committee met on August 8, 2019. The following list of policy changes have been recommended for adoption by the board, and such adoption shall require 2 readings by the board. A change to policy 3.206, community use of facilities, was discussed at the policy meeting, but in light of additional legal research, that version of the policy has been taken off notice. We have policy 1.101, role of the Board of Education. Number 2, policy 1.406, minutes. Number 3, policy 1.803, tobacco and vape-free schools. Number 4, policy 1.804, alcohol and drugs in the workplace. Number 5, policy 2.403, surplus property sales. Number 6, policy 2.805, purchasing. Number 7, policy 2.8051, credit card/credit lines. Number 8, policy 3.202, emergency preparedness plan. Number 9, policy 4.602, grade point average and class rank 9 through 12. Number 10, policy 4.605, graduation requirements. Number 11, policy 4.700, testing programs. Number 12, policy 5.200, separation practices for tenured teachers. Number 13, 5.201, separation practices for non-tenured teachers. Number 14, policy 5.302, sick leave. Number 15, policy 5.303, personal and professional leave. Number 16, policy 6.2011, voluntary pre-K attendance. Number 17, Policy 6.308, Bus Safety and Conduct. Number 18, Policy 3.218, Service Animals in District Facilities. Number 19, Policy 4.206, Homebound Instruction. Number 20, Policy 5.308, Sabbatical Leave. Number 21, Policy 6.506, Students from Military Families.
Okay, any questions on those? Okay, second item.
All right, the second item is policy change proposal, policy 3.206, community use of facilities. In order to ensure equal access to facilities by nonprofit organizations in the Rutherford County community, the attached amendment to policy 3.206 is recommended to the board for adoption on first reading. This language allows the 501(c) organizations to request to pay for the use of facilities through in-kind services equal to or greater than the value of the fee that would have otherwise been imposed. The organization must obtain approval from the director of schools and enter into a written memorandum of agreement to memorialize the proposed in-kind service.
Questions on that? All right, insurance update.
Our next meeting is next Thursday, and they're going to continue the discussion about pre-diabetes, as we talked about at our last meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Director's update.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to recognize our instructional department. We're over a month in school. They're doing a fabulous job. A lot of great things are happening. A lot of hard work. I had the opportunity today to sit in on a high school PLC, principal PLC, and I would have to say that was probably one of the most effective meetings that I've been in with the high school principals. Not to say that they don't have effective ones, but the most effective, okay, just to put it like that. I'd also like to point out that Dr. Kelly Chastain, on her own, with the support of our instructional department, has networked with the districts around us and are doing some kind of share out best practices. She's working with Williamson County, Wilson County, Metro Davidson, Nashville, several school systems, and I think that's one of the things that I'm very impressed with our instructional department. They're meeting the needs of our teachers, which in turn are going to meet the needs for our students, and there's some great things taking place. Dr. Sullivan has got a great staff. I can't say enough great things about him now. Now, with that said, keep up the good work because you're doing a tremendous job, you and your staff. I'd also like to give some kudos to Ms. Page. Ms. Page has a real challenge with some of the things that the State Department is providing for us that we have to adhere to. And she's doing a good job with our principals, making them understand the ramifications of it. And she always does it with a smile and a chuckle here and there. But I do appreciate her hard work. I know it's a challenge having to do that. And most of you, I think we went over that with our board, that policy, or did we go over that?
We have the trauma-informed last year, but we have not necessarily addressed some of the alternative school law changes.
You wanna go over that?
Sure,
So
I'd
they
be
can
happy
understand where I'm coming from over that?
Absolutely. You might hear about this as you go forward from some of your district schools. We had 2 law changes implemented over the summer that impact how we address discipline in the county. I'd like to give a shout out really to a lot of our principals. Most of them are ahead on one of the laws I think we're likely to see with some staying power. It's a trauma-informed discipline law, and it doesn't necessarily restrict what we do, but more the approach that we take when we discipline. It wants us to take a look at the childhood traumas that our students might have been experiencing or ongoing in their lives, and what that might mean for the behaviors that we're seeing in our schools. And you all have seen a lot of presentations already on some of the mental health challenges we see on a day-to-day basis. And this really ties into that work that we're already doing. A lot of our schools are already successfully doing it. We got to hear today from Mr. Ash at Laverne High School's fully rolled out restorative justice and seen it sounded like close to 75 to 90% decrease in OSS, out of school suspension days. And so what we're asking our principals to do, we're forming a committee to start to look at different approaches to take for social, emotional, informed approaches to discipline, and so that we can do an accurate reading of our students and help them with those behaviors, more than just putting them out of school without looking into the why. So that's the one I think we'll see for a while, and I think we're fortunate that we have wonderful staff that's already taken the initiative in a lot of ways on that. The one that's a little more challenging that we're working through with the rest of the state, so we're right on step with all of our fellow districts, is an alternative school law change. And what it says is that our 7th through 12th graders, if they are suspended or expelled, that they must be placed into an alternative school or into an alternative program. And that suspension date can be a single day, and it can go all the way up to our zero tolerance students, that they need to be placed into school. So the reading to, when you wipe away all of the extra language they add, really what it's saying is there's not an option to do out-of-school suspension unless you don't have staff or space to accommodate that student. Now, we're reading that to include safety, and I think that's in line with all of our fellow districts. We want to make sure that our students, if we can work with them in an alternative setting, whether that's ISS, whether that's Skyping into classes. Some of our schools have been doing amazing things using technology so that our students aren't learning and losing instructional time, and then we can start to implement some of these in trauma-informed discipline practices to get their behavior where we want it. That's what the focus is. Now, if we end up having a student who we do need, the staff is not able at that time to safely have them at school, and they need time, we can put them out. We just need to be thoughtful about how we do that. And so we will see the alternative schools having probably a pretty solid, they'll probably be at capacity most of the year to help comply with this law, but we are working on it. We're looking at working with the TSBA, working with our TOS group, and with other organizations to lobby a change in that law. The hope would be that we would see that be a 10-day suspension where that'd kick in. And so the practical implication, if we were to able to make that change in the law, would just be our zero tolerance students that would be looking at. And almost with very rare exception, our zero tolerance students, as long as they have a parent that advocates for them even slightly, they're going to our alternative schools anyway. So right now, the only difference is we're putting them automatically into alternative school if we can safely do that. So it's a challenge. It's a different way for our principals to think about discipline, but it's in line with where the rest of the country is going. You'll see those trends, and I think our principals have been truly open and positive about this, and we'll be doing more as a team to get resources for them in order to do that successfully.
One of the things that she and I talked about, and we spoke about it up at my conference up last week. You know, as you read it, obviously we've got two conflicting laws here. We have the zero tolerance, which technically is out of school for a period of time, for one calendar year. Yet this law here circumvents that law, because now even a zero tolerance, it's not really a zero tolerance, and it doesn't have to come through me to be modified. I mean, they go directly to the alternative placement. One of the things that everyone was concerned about, you know, a lot of times when we have some issues that occur in schools, we have what's called a threat assessment. And sometimes we have to put someone out for a day so that we can get the team together to do the assessment to determine everything. I don't think it was a well thought out law, but they didn't ask me, you know. If they had, I would have probably given them a couple of opinions. But anyway, I'm all for restorative practices. However, I don't think we should ever compromise the safety of all kids for one. And we're going to follow that along with the law. And I think Ms. Page has done a great job with our principals explaining that to them. Now, what you will also see we have in policy in terms of if a kid's out of school or tardy of school X amount of days and X amount of days until they get, that right there will go away. That circumvents some of our policy because, and quite frankly, to be honest with you, I don't think we should be putting, it really is crazy to put a kid out of school because they're not coming to school on time. I mean, if you think about it, it's really conflicting. But I think we'll get through this thing. I think there's enough of people, I think it's the entire state, that are working through these organizations to make sure that we're accomplishing what we want, which is a safe, orderly environment, but also an opportunity for kids to have an education and provide for them.
So when we talk about this trauma-informed discipline, and I'm kind of guessing from what I'm hearing and the way you describe it, it kind of ties in with the whole thing that's coming out about the ACEs
That's correct.
program.
That's right.
I'd like to better understand what the process is. Okay, so maybe a hypothetical example, you've got a student that gets into a fight or gets mad at a teacher and flips a desk and, lashes out in anger or what have you. What steps take place and who handles those steps in terms of determining the trauma assessment?
Absolutely. We have a couple of screener tools now that our staff uses, and we're looking at increasing those as well. Now, there is a law for socio-emotional screeners. You have to have parent consent. So we do have some new screening tools we're going to use to bolster this law, but we want to make sure we get that parental consent first so that parents are well informed of what they're agreeing to. But right now, in that context, a lot of where we catch this most often is at our elementary school level. When we see those kinds of behaviors, usually, especially for our elementary school team, they're well versed in identifying that issue. They're still going to address the behavior. The trauma-informed discipline says the same thing. You are to model positive behaviors, and there's still an expectation of compliance from a student, despite the ACEs, despite what might be there. So in that instance, the school is allowed in that scenario to de-escalate properly, which we do district-wide training for all of our schools. If the student was hurting themselves or others, they could potentially have a CPI team called in for crisis. Usually we clear a room first to let the student de-escalate naturally. At that point, the student is usually brought to calm down, and then the principal and administrative team makes a decision on discipline. That is not in a vacuum. It still has to take place with our SPED team. At that time, a lot of times, if that student isn't SPED identified, that's a perfect opportunity to start looking, is there a pattern of behavior? Has this happened more than once? And usually we can get a SAT team called. That first meeting with the parent often reveals a lot very quickly. The parents, sometimes the fact that the school's called a SAT team meeting at all is their first opportunity to voice to someone who might have some expertise to help. And so in that context, our school counselors and school psychologists are engaged, and they also can meet with the students as part of that evaluation process after parental consent, and they can inquire to some of that background information. We have certain restrictions of what we can ask, but not many, as long as we have parent consent. So our hope is not having, with this new law, that process works very well with the students where we see a pattern, and we're able to do functional behavioral assessments, figure out where that's coming from, what triggers it, and put in practices in place that are well research-based to correct that behavior and bring that student around to more general compliance. What we want to roll out is not necessarily having to go all the way to the SAT team, because for some of our students, they really aren't to the level where an IEP is necessary, that intensive process is necessary. And that's where we're hoping to put in more ACE screeners. So we would do a blanket consent in the student handbook is what we're looking at, so that we can do screeners to collect data on our students continuously. And it would do things like, how many times have you moved? What parents are at home? Is it a divorced family? We don't want to pry too much into our students' lives unnecessarily and make our families uncomfortable, but we want enough information where we might know ahead of time a student might have certain challenges so that we can help address them ahead of time. And Pam, our new instructional lead department person who works with RTIB2, has done fantastic work already, and she's only been with us for a couple of weeks to start looking into that process to make it a broader screening of our students for ACEs. And our alternative schools are doing that as well. They've independently started doing analysis of their students as they come in the intake process to figure out more about their backgrounds to help with that as well.
So blanket consent on the student handbook, that concerns me a little bit.
Sure.
Talk to me about that, how that plays into the law that says parents have to be, so is that they're giving blanket consent to let that happen, whether they get informed or not?
No, the consent would be, they would know exactly which screener it is. We would have a copy of it for their review where they can see exactly what's being asked. And then they would have the opt-out feature. So when I say blanket, I mean more, it doesn't need to be an opt-in, that the parent would then opt out, which is in line with most of the things in our handbook anyway. So that's what we're looking at now. And we do other screeners that are similar, so this would be added to our list. And the law is really looking for us trying to diagnose mental health, and that's really not what we're doing here. We're looking at the function of behavior, but we want to be transparent. And so after talking to the school psychologist, even though I think we could make an argument that consent may not even be needed, we think it's better to be transparent with our families and let them know what we're doing, so that they can be a part of the process if they want to, but if they're uncomfortable, they can express that as well.
And we'd be using tiered approach to the RTIB, a tier 1, tier 2.
Absolutely.
All the way up to a tier 3. So there, it's really a behavioral approach, or excuse me, an academic approach to behavior. It's the same thing that we would do if a child was having issues with, in math or ELA or something of that nature. It's just a little bit, I guess, when we do that, it can be, like you said, there are times. The concerns that I have is that when we get to the point, and we've done this, where there's multiple times a classroom is cleared. It generally does happen in a elementary, and I know we've had some classrooms that's occurred, but that's the purpose of the tier approach and looking for markers, looking for things that exacerbate the behavior and things of that nature, so that we're not being a part of the problem, but part of the solution.
That's exactly right. The goal is ultimately to have our school process not be a new traumatizing event for a student. That's the intent.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Is it a fair statement to say that we can expel a student from a school, but we cannot expel them, and I mean permanently, from the school system? Is that correct?
Not necessarily. So if a student truly was a danger to the point where we know putting them in the alternative school creates an environment that is not safe for our other students, then we have the authority, even within this law, not even bending it to, as it reads, to put that student out if that's what is needed. Additionally, the law doesn't also make an opportunity for a student to be in the alternative setting and to continue to have behaviors that are disruptive. So if we've put them in that alternative setting, they've had that opportunity, and they've reoffended in a way that we haven't been able to figure out how to check. Say they're kind of, maybe they're almost 18. We see that a lot. And at that point, it's very difficult to bring around change. We want to, but it's hard. In those cases, if they're in that alternative setting, we can put them out as well. And that's from the school system. They are out for a full calendar year if that's ultimately what we decide.
Where are we now in capacity, and I'm using your word, on Smyrna West and Daniel McKee?
Smyrna West, we're probably getting close to capacity.
Yeah, they're about, I think she said this, they're at 77 today with 4 enrolling. And I don't, their capacity is in the low 100s,
Real low.
110. So what we've asked our principals is to be very thoughtful about the students they send there, and know that every student they send, if it's in a moment, maybe they could have done it in a different way, that's a slot they may want in the future. So to work with our principals and make sure that kids that would really benefit from being in that program, because it really is more than just discipline, it is a therapeutic setting. Those principals love those students, and they do a lot of hard work to bring them around to be passionate about their education, that they think thoughtfully about what students would thrive in that environment. And so we're asking that they communicate even more than they already do now to make sure that happens. And we'll create a waiting list. I talked with Mr. Delbridge today. If we do get capacity and we have kids who really still would benefit, but they truly can't function in the way that they're currently at in our school, we'll create a waiting list for them so that as soon as the student graduates back out, that person can take their slot.
We do have something we'll be coming forward on our strategic plan that we'll be bringing about our alternative school that perhaps can give us more capacity down on the northern end of the county, but like everything else, it's going to come with a cost. But we'll have to weigh that, and if we need that space, that's something we're going to have to really think hard about.
If a student is put in an alternative school, obviously they've done something that's reasonably serious, but there's serious and then there's really serious, and I get all that. But they can earn their way out, can they not, early?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're not set down there for a specific length of time?
Correct. That work through the program.
And you review those, don't you?
Right. They will forward it to me for approval, and knowing them and trusting them because I know they're doing a great job. I have yet to turn down a release, you know, unless it had, you know, there are some things that I think we all understand that sometimes we've turned down actually the modification due to a serious event that involved some type of violence. You know, we do that and we'll continue to do that because I don't think that serves the child any good, and it definitely don't serve the school.
At every town hall that I went to, which I believe was 4, I don't know how many we had, but
Where's James at? How many we had, James, last year? 9.
and you told them, I believe in every case, the audience that was there, that we were going to take particularly the threats against schools and teachers very, very seriously, and not, I bring this up because obviously we had a case this week,
Right,
the silliness,
absolutely.
but it's not going to be accepted as silliness. It's going to be taken very seriously.
And
I think they need to listen to that.
I do, and I'd like to tell you that they took my words to heart, but we're going to be providing some information. Mr. Krim, we're keeping up with all the statistics, and we're going to be providing you some information of how much we've had to deal with that already this year. We'll continue to have that message. I also would like to invite everyone out. I think, is it next Monday? Rock Springs Middle School,
Next Monday at 5:30.
5:30 Rock Springs Middle School. And we're taking a different approach this year a little bit. We're going to start on our second one. We're actually going to bring out our business partners, specific business partners who will be speaking on how we're working with them to identify some skill sets that they're looking for us to embed within our curriculum and also to actually offer in our high schools. So, we had the data from our youth science came back, and there was one business partner was looking for to bring them in, and we unfortunately we didn't get enough in, but we feel like bringing them out to the community and speaking to our community, we're building capacity for the school system by employers. I mean, I can envision the employers will probably come out there looking, if anyone needed a job in the audience, they might be able to employ them. I mean, it's one of the things we're trying to do with our constituents, and at the same time trying to have them become advocates for us throughout the community.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Tennessee Legislative Network, Ms. Johnson. Okay, thank you. Federal, Mr. Hodge.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you, sir. Okay, general discussion. Okay, I've got one thing is committees for next year, we're going to say the same, except Ms. Sharp will be taking over federal relations. Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Oh, yes, I do. You want to say something?
Go ahead, I'm just gonna make a comment.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, Mr. Spurlock's done some recognitions a while ago. I'd like to tell Mr. Lee, you did a good job last week you and Mr. Spurlock both on explaining building program, land searches and all that, on the radio. So, just wanna let
He did a good job, I agree. We might carry you back again, Mr. Lee. Get breakfast this time.
You mean you didn't feed him?
I didn't,
He lucked out. I was having some medical tests the next day, so I
Right.
wasn't able to eat. Before Ms. Sharp says something, and I apologize, but prior to the meeting, Mr. Everett and I were talking back in his office, and we need to, he's planning on starting back in the next couple of weeks, the bus driver committees that we had last year, and I assume the same two gracious individuals that participated last year are going to stay with us, and we're going to start that again here in a couple of weeks. But what we wanted to bring up for y'all's thought, this is a contract year for the transportation contract. We do know that the drivers are pulling together to get, I guess, a representative committee to negotiate. I'm new to this. I have not got, I mean, I've dealt with negotiations before, but I've not negotiated for the transportation department. So I guess, I don't know how it's been done in the past. I think the bus drivers are going to look at it a little differently this time. We have a contract, but whether it's $1, you know, whether they're looking for an additional $1 a mile or a bus seat or what their recommendations are going to be, I assume that the board would want some type of committee to work with them and then bring back proposals to the board. So I want to bring that up tonight for y'all to be thinking about how you all would like to see us handle this situation, because I would like to see it get started early so that we're not dragging this out into February or March while we're trying to do budgets with unknowns on what a large chunk of that budget's going to be is the transportation part of it. And if there's any way to maybe start it early and try and get something worked out prior to budget time, I think it would be of benefit. So just wanted to bring that up and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Maybe you could get everybody a copy of the contract?
I can do that
Thank you.
by tomorrow night.
Anyone else?
I want to talk about today's Constitution Day, and I went to Laverne Middle today, and they had a Freedom Shrine. The Murfreesboro Noon Exchange Club came and installed the Freedom Shrine, and it's basically all of our founding documents, and they're on very heavy lacquered wood, so they can come off the wall, they can be passed around in the class, the students can see all of these documents and they can examine them. It's pretty extensive. I would say go out and see it, because it's pretty awesome to be able to see those. Obviously, they're not the original or anywhere near the original, but at least the students can see them and see the intent, and there's a whole wall full of documents, so it was incredible. And while I was there, the students were handing out the pocket constitutions. So quite a celebration going on up at the north end of the county. And if parents will kind of look at the websites, they've already started some of the Title I meetings on the north end of the county, so others may want to attend.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nothing else? We're adjourned.